Welcome to this episode of Huepy-B-Outdoors. I'm going to do pork chops and potatoes in my 10-inch Dutch oven. It's a very simple recipe. I'm just going to brown my pork chops slightly on each side, and then I'm going to saute a medium onion. And when the onion's all sauteed up, I'm going to put the pork chops back in the Dutch oven, cover it with some sliced potatoes, and then a can of mushroom soup, and I'm just going to let it simmer. Enjoy this video. I preheated my Dutch oven. I put most of my coals on the bottom, all my coals on the bottom, because I am browning these pork chops on each side. I have my potatoes and onions already cut up, ready to go. I also added a garlic clove into the onions. So I'm going to brown the pork chops on each side, remove them from the heat, saute my onions and garlic, pork chops back in the Dutch oven, put the onion and the garlic that's been sauteed over top of it, along with a thin layer of potatoes, and then a can of cream of mushroom soup. I'm going to saute my onions. I'll get that escapee out of there. You can use any kind of oil. I use some bacon grease. Now I'm going to use some cream of mushroom soup. You could use cream of celery soup. I used half the water the recipe calls for. Now, instead of pulling all those onions out of there, I'm going to just stick them to the side. Put my pork chops back in. Cover them with the onions. Now I changed the recipe up on you because I'm using cream of mushroom soup and I had some mushrooms. I decided to slice up some mushrooms and put them in as well. And the original recipe was just going to be the onions and the potatoes and the pork chops, but there's some sliced portobellos in there now. I'm just layering my potatoes on top. And then a can of cream of mushroom soup, and I'm using half the water that the recipe called for. Now I'm going to remove some of the coals from the bottom and add them to the top of my Dutch oven. And again, I'm not baking, I'm trying to get more of a simmer. So we'll let that go for a little bit and see how she comes out. This is the first time I'm doing this recipe, and it's either going to be a go or a no-go. But it's looking like a go to me. I didn't get to finish my filming last night, but this is what my pork chops and potatoes turned out like. I used 1 pork chop per person. Actually, it was just me. I had 3 pork chops to use, so I used 3 pork chops, 3 potatoes, 1 medium onion, a can of cream and mushroom soup. I changed up the recipe and added some mushrooms along with it, and it just turned out perfect. Now, this recipe called for no seasoning, and it was a really bland taste. I went ahead and added some adobo seasoning and also just a 1/4 of a teaspoon of Old Bay, and it turned out beautiful. It wasn't really strong Old Bay, it just gave it a slight little taste. And then the adobo seasoning is basically salt and black pepper and garlic and other spices. I ate 1 pork chop last night, but I wanted to bring you guys back and show you the end result. This was a beautiful recipe, and I will put the ingredients in the description of the video below. Thank you for joining me on another episode of Huepy-B-Outdoors. That was an outstanding recipe. It turned out beautifully. The recipe called for it to just simmer on a bed of coals, and I changed it up. I threw some coals on top, and I remember my cabbage and sausage recipe, I was able to do it all with 1 burn. So this didn't quite work out. I needed to put more coals under it and allow it to simmer until the potatoes and the pork chops just fell apart. And it turned out excellent. Please leave me some comments below, and I want to put a special shout out to Lee and Tom. And also, Jeannie, thank you for your constructive criticism and your inputs. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Huepy-B-Outdoors.